Welcome back, everybody. I was on spring break, so you've missed some of these videos, or you took a nice break, as I did as well. But I welcome you back with the lovely Michelle Danner. Michelle is fascinating, and she spent her whole life in entertainment as an actress herself, as an acting coach, a famed acting coach, as a director. We're going to talk about all of that. So let's dive in with Michelle. Please welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. Nice banner. We're going to talk about your film shortly, and it's won a number of awards. I think you probably won more since you've put together that banner. But for people
We
who are not
have.
familiar with you at this point, let's start at the beginning. Please tell people a little bit about yourself and how you came to be.
Well, I was born in New York, but my dad worked for the William Morris Agency at the time, and
Mhm.
that was in the 60s. And they asked him to open the William Morris Agency in Paris, the very first offices off the Champs-Élysées.
Yeah.
And so here we are. We moved to France. We packed everything. And it was a great childhood. At the beginning, French kids would tease me quite a lot and call me La Petite Américaine, the little American, and
Yeah.
would pull my hair and put frogs in my bag. But I started to win some popularity because I was fascinated at an early age. I was fascinated with storytelling, so I adapted the novel by Alexandre Dumas, The Queen's Necklace, Le
Mm.
Collier de la Reine, and I cast literally like every kid in school. So I became the teacher's, brightest light and worst nightmare at the same time because we had to get all the kids in rehearsals and then I continued to do more. So I went from being the ostracized little kid to the very creative little girl that would mount shows one after the other 3 times a year. So I had a great childhood. I filled with culture, lots of movie stars and international stars coming to the house for dinner. I would hide under my dad's desk at the William Morris Agency and saw everybody come in. And, it was just great. As a matter of fact, I'm watching some documentaries these last few days on Ingrid Bergman and Audrey Hepburn. And it reminds me very much, in a way, just because of Europe, of my childhood and what my childhood was about.
Yeah. How old were you when you moved?
I was 4. And
Hmm.
then I was 15, 16 when we came back to the States. We moved back to New York. My mom is Italian and she's still alive and she was never happy living in Europe. I was so happy. We were all so happy. She wanted to come back to New York. So we moved back to New York and we continued to live there. And then I moved to LA in my 30s.
That's
That was
wonderful.
my trajectory.
It's interesting. When did you start being fascinated with Dumas? For me, I'm originally from Europe as well, and I remember watching the Three Musketeers on television, and then that's where I went to do fencing pretty much right after it. So I think I was 5 or 6. That's when I first came across it. So it sounded like you were about that same age when you when you became fascinated as well.
Yes, well, I was just fascinated by Alexandre Dumas and Jean-Paul Sartre and Jean Anouilh and Molière and
Mhm.
Beaumarchais, and the list goes on and on. French literature was always, I would read all the time, nonstop. As a matter of fact, you have this backdrop here, but I'm in my study and I literally am surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of books. I'm a huge reader. I was since childhood. It's the thing that makes life better and it's the advice that I give to all my students and my kids. You know, always read something great. Never be without a book.
Yeah.
It's really made my life richer on every level.
So, being such an avid reader, is there a favorite quote of yours that sticks with you through the times?
Oh my God, you put me on the spot. I don't know. There's just so many quotes.
Any one
Um,
that comes to mind?
well, the one just comes to mind just because I just saw Ingrid Bergman, and I don't even know if it's the exact quote, but I have to. to act is to breathe, you know.
Mhm.
And I love the fact that she loved theater as much as film. Uh, yeah.
So, how did the career choice come about? Is it because you were basically in that environment from early age, or was it something specific that made you wanted to go into the acting industry or acting world?
I always ask that question of my students.
Mhm.
Where is it in your genes? Where does it appear? Where's the chip? Where's the artistic chip? I mean, I don't know. My mother was a dancer and a singer. My dad always said that producing was an art form.
Mhm.
I think that this was in my genes from, and then of course my environment. It's always two things, right? But it wasn't my nature, but my surroundings helped to form my passion for the arts.
Mhm. So you're a reader. You were casting people in plays early on, and then you decided to go into acting. So which part was the driver? Did you want to direct? Did you want to write yourself because you love reading, or did you want to act? What was the driving force?
To this day, I can tell you that each individually at different times in my life have
Mhm.
pulled me in a
Yeah.
certain direction. And I think I've always loved teaching at a very early age. When I say at an early age, I started teaching when I was 13, really,
Mhm.
in France. So between teaching, between writing, uh, between directing and acting, those are all strong passions of mine. And I can't tell you which one I like better
Right.
because, and I know you know, maybe you have to pick and not wear all the hats, but I have to say that I love all of them. I really do.
I've always struggled with picking, and it was very difficult for me. I've been blessed and cursed, and I know you understand when I say this that I've been good at many things, and being good at many things means you enjoy many things, and you get immense pleasure from doing those things and being good at them. So taking one and saying that that's my primary one, from a marketing perspective, that was the right thing to do. From my life perspective, it was the hardest thing that I could possibly do. So I understand when, when you say that it's hard to pick for you.
Yeah, I was at a bookstore a few years ago when we could go into bookstores, but we will again. And I saw this book called Refuse to Choose. And I'm like, okay, this is my book. I'm buying it.
Yeah, no, it's very true, and it's an interesting conundrum because I'm in marketing, and in corporate, it's people have to be able to identify you in a matter of seconds, and they need to understand exactly who you are and what you do, and you can't confuse them. Otherwise, they're going to lose interest and go to somebody else. So I have this dichotomy in my brain of I know what's right, but I don't want to do it. So
Mhm.
that's been my life in a nutshell.
Well, even as much as I devote my life to the arts, there's always a part of my day that I have to do, the business.
Yeah.
I call it the business of acting. And so I've made my peace with that.
So let's talk about the business of acting, and let's get back to you being the teacher. I know you spent some time with Stella Adler. I know you spent some time with Uda Hagenen. Um, what I want to get to the golden box in a few minutes, but what informed your own understanding of acting, and how did you come to develop your own method and style?
I studied with Stella Adler
Mhm.
at a young age as a teen. That was my first teacher when I moved back to New York City.
That's not a
And
bad first teacher.
no, it was great. She was great. And I studied with other teachers there as well. There was a Russian teacher that taught me a lot, that ended up directing me in a play that I did with Stephen Bauer and Judd Nelson. Well, actually, with Stephen Bauer. Judd came to see it. Judd also was studying with Stella Adler at the same time that I was studying with Stella. So I was part of that era. Um, that was before Judd went on to do Breakfast Club and all those great movies that he did. But But I always remember rebelling. I loved Stella Adler's technique, but I was a rebel at a young age. And Stella, as you know, was quite dogmatic. And she
Yeah.
was like, this is the way that you do it, and this is the way. And so, my rebellious mind went, really? There's got to be another way and another way. And, as I grew up and had kids, and I believed in much more progressive, ideas of learning, that there's just isn't just one way. You don't all just come to the middle and do the same thing,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to art. How can that be? Art is so individual. And then I went on to study, with Uta Hagen, um, who also was, all those great iconic teachers, very opinionated in terms of how you should do it and what you should use.
Mm.
And I studied with a lot of people, and everybody made sense to me. I was like, oh, wait, that's good. No, I like that too. That's great too. And I thought, is it really one or the other? Can't it just be depending on what you're working on or what the medium is? Can it be
Yeah.
whatever you feel is the strongest choice for that moment? And so I, from an early age, learned as much as I could. I familiarized myself with, there's a lot of acting books out there. I mean, of course, we know the iconic teachers, but there's a lot of acting books.
Mm.
And that's the reason why I have a book that I want to publish called The Golden Box. But I don't want to do what Uta Hagen did, which is, when she did Challenge for the Actor, she said, don't read the first one, don't read Respect for Acting. I've revised my thinking. And I've read both, and I know exactly what she means. You revise, you think, you deepen,
Yeah.
you change your mind about certain things. Um, but anyway, I'm, one of these days I'm going to publish my book. But till then, I am still, working on it. So I studied with all these great people. And then I thought, they're all right. Everybody's right.
Mm.
They
Mm.
all make really good points. And actors should study every technique and open up their own personal toolbox where they put their gold in, their
Mm.
golden box. And then they use whatever they want,
Yeah.
whenever they want.
I agree with you, by the way, in terms of rebelling and dogma. I am, yeah, that's not me at all. Anybody that says that this is the only way to do it, I'm already out the door. It's just, yeah, that's. I don't know. There's the if this is the rainbow child in me or whatever it is, but that's just not how I'm wired. And I've learned over time the same thing, and I equate it to martial arts. Bruce Lee, one of my martial arts idols, he was picking and choosing from different techniques, and he was forming his own that works for him, and he was encouraging others to do the same. It is the same with acting. There are different techniques, and one works for one works for another, or a technique may not work for you for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden it makes sense, and then it's a proper application of it in a project. So yeah, I completely agree that all of us should really just study, and then things will come out when they're supposed to come out organically.
Right. I couldn't have said it better.
It's an interesting thing to me as well, and I wanted to get your opinion on this because you have worked with so many actors, and you've worked with a lot of famous actors that people know about. Um, I've noticed, maybe this is not scientific, this is just observation, but I've noticed that in terms of acting, people are really wonderful at two stages. Either when they're just beginning before anybody tells them anything, or it's much later when they have gone through the cycle and discovered that, oh, I am still just me. It's different aspects of me. And I'll use the techniques because techniques are important. Being on set is ridiculous. And if you're not professional, it's just not going to work. But it's that thing of either very early or quite a bit later. And in the middle, a lot of the actors are just confused and they don't know what works and they get lost in it. And the idea and that first instinct of, I want to be an actor, I want to create, that kind of falls behind because they hear so much contradictory information that they forget to actually act and enjoy it. So it's that cycle. And sometimes I feel that unless a young actor is in good hands, it may be better for them not to study right away, but just to create and have fun, and then start kind of getting things in place. What do you think?
Well, I think you you may be right, except for Meryl Streep. Meryl Streep is perfect in everything she does.
Yeah.
Um, life is all a rehearsal, I think. It's
Yeah.
always freed me, whether I've worked on film or on stage, that it's all process. We're all in process all the time. You're all learning. It's all a rehearsal. It's never a finished product. Everything is on its way to something. And depending on who you're working with, obviously, if you're, whether in any medium, if you have a director that third eye, they can guide you and can help you. And, you look at something that you've done and you say, well, I can do it better. I would do it better now than I would have done it back then. Um, it's it's the passage of time, it's process, which I think that you have to give yourself at every step of the way, whether you're starting out or you're more seasoned as an artist. You have to give yourself a pass for everything, forgive everything you do, and a giant yes. You have to give yourself permission to try everything and anything. Um, and then it comes out the way it comes out. And a lot of people don't like to look at their work. I can understand that. I don't like to go back and look because I do think, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that. It's painful. I just want to accept that it was what it was at that moment in
Yeah.
time. And we're moving on, and the next thing will be in that moment in time.
Yeah, I understand that, and I there are a couple of key things that you've mentioned in terms of allowing yourself the freedom to just do it. My main growth as an actor came exactly at that moment when I all of a sudden during a scene just decided, yeah, I'm going to do that, and it was that permission that was critical because until then I was blocked and I had walls around. And when I finally gave myself permission, it became fun. And then I all of a sudden understood what being in it actually felt like. So to me, that was the biggest gift. So I resonate completely with what you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Um,
Allow yourself to be free and play in the moment.
which is how we all start out, right? We all start out because it's play pretend. We are pretending to be something and it's fun. And then we get lost along the way until we find ourselves again. Um,
Yeah. And I think some of it may have to do also with dealing with that, potential negative interject, that gremlin perched on your shoulders that speaks to you. And when, that's what age ends up taking care of. When you're starting out, like you said, you just do. You're like the child in the playground. You're uninhibited. You don't think. And then, you have enough people saying, well, no, you should be this, you should be that. Maybe you start reading some reviews, some good ones, some bad ones. And then, when you grow and time takes care of going, can I curse on this show? Say just fuck it, I mean, who
yeah,
cares? At the end of the day, who cares what people think? And that helps you to find the freedom. It's to just deal with that negative interject inside of you and just say, just, take a rest, go do something else. I'm going to do what I want to do.
yeah. And actually, that fuck it moment is if there is any kind of parallel between all of the interviews that I have done with all the actors on the show. That parallel is they all reach that fuck it moment, and usually it comes right before they start booking. And because when they go in for the auditions, they are just free and they're being themselves and they're making choices that feel right to them and they're not worried about what others are going to think. And there's a line between fuck it and being unprofessional or doing things that you're not supposed to. But getting to that point and just allowing yourself not to have that weight of expectations and just enjoy, make your
I think
choices.
I think I'm going to revise the title of my acting book. Instead of it being the golden box, it's going to say, just say fuck it. I think actors will understand what that means.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I want to have T-shirts, and it's one of my things that I do on the side is T-shirts, and one of the T-shirts is definitely "fuck it," because that's that's it, right? And it's talking about the ages, right? There are three distinct ages, and people will know this. We're children at the beginning, and we don't know, nor do we worry about what others think of us because we're not aware of it. We're just being ourselves. And then on the third stage, we're old, and we say fuck it. We don't care what anybody's thinking of us. We're just going to be ourselves. And then there is the majority of our lifetime in which we worry too much about what others think of us. And what does this come out right? Or is this going to affect my career? How will others view me? And then we restrict ourselves. So we're happiest when we're kids and when we're old. We're mostly, I'm not going to say we're miserable throughout, but people definitely have a lot of those moments. And it's because we're not allowing ourselves to be ourselves. So acting is not any different. And thankfully, on acting, you have an ability to actually be yourself in another experience, thus allowing yourself the freedom to say fuck it and just go.
Exactly. I love it. Yeah.
Yes, we're renaming the show from Let's Dive Into Fuck It. I like it. It works. Um, you've worked with a lot of people, and I want to get to the runner in just a moment, but you've worked with a lot of very well-known actors. Um, what was an experience that really stands out to you from those experiences that you've had teaching them?
It's so funny. Last night I dreamt uh, about an actor that I've worked with, a famous actor,
Mhm.
and we were rehearsing something. But maybe because I was preparing myself today, because I just came from a rehearsal with the wonderful Anne Archer. We're rehearsing a play that we are going to open as soon as we can, called A Ticket to the Circus. And, when you're in sync with another actor and you're finding the material, you're making the writing come to life, you're illuminating it, and you both are in sync together, and that moment, yes, that was, you come up with it at the same time.
Yeah.
There's such surge of energy, there's just an exchange there that makes the work of creation just thrilling. It's a thrilling thing to discover with another artist, moments that make the material come to life. And I just had it just now today with Anne, and I've had it on movie sets, that I've worked on, and just I've been lucky to work with some extremely talented people, and I love working with unknowns. I know we're going to talk about the runner, and in the runner we discover an unknown actor who's just really a wonderful young actor. Um, I just love working with actors. I remember reading in Sidney Lumet's book, Making Movies, how much he loved actors. And it resonated with me that moment, because I was like, I do too. I really love actors.
Mhm.
And I love discovering those, moments that are devoid of artifice, that are pure and authentic.
Mhm. Uh, Count me in that category. So me three. I've said this before on my show. I realized it because, and I understood why, because the actors are open-minded, the actors are self-aware, and the actors are accepting. And those are all the qualities that am really drawn to, excuse me. And that's why I love actors, because it's a really really difficult profession. It's misunderstood. There's the stuff that we see on red carpets is not what the profession is about. And the people who are in it and in it for the right reasons, I love them. I have great respect and admiration for them. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, in terms of the runner, let's get to that. And this is not the first movie that you have done, but tell us about the runner and how is it doing, and what was the reason for you creating
Yeah, so the rest is my actually my first movie.
it? Mhm.
It's my first feature. I and very personal to me. Not personal because I have two boys and they've done drugs because knock wood, they have not. But personal because it really moved me. I have a theme that always affects me, which is when we don't take care of our children, when our children fall through the cracks. That always, just really upsets me on many levels. And so I had watched a news report about how kids were forced to go, underage kids undercover to capture whatever drug kingpin of the town is, and how police, doesn't tell their parents, and sometimes these things end in tragedies. So I was very moved by that story, and I wrote a treatment and called my good buddy, wonderful writer, Jason Chase Terrell, and said, "Can you write the screenplay?" I had just finished directing his baby, Bad Impulse, the psychological thriller that's out there. It was released in December.
Mhm.
We got great response, and he wrote a really wonderful screenplay. We worked on it together, and we shot it right before the pandemic, right before the lockdown, and we were going to move it to April. So some things are meant to be, because it's very possible I would have never made this movie at all if we hadn't just pushed through and did it.
Yeah.
But we did it right before the pandemic. And so I spent this last year being very creative and editing it. Now it's doing the festival circuit and it's doing quite well. It premiered last week at CineQuest, and it's going on to the World Fest in Houston. And then some pretty other big film festivals are coming next. So it'll probably be released, gathering in the fall after we finish the festival circuit. But it's a personal movie to me, and that's probably why it's, I think, my best movie up till now.
Yeah. Uh, Being a parent of two kids, one is a teenager, another one is almost. It absolutely makes sense.
Me too.
As soon as I know about your two boys, and as soon as you said kids falling through the cracks, immediately that's okay. I'm like, yep, I feel that. I absolutely feel that. It's a personal thing. Yeah.
But the story is told through a very entertaining thriller.
Yeah.
It's a very entertaining thriller, and it has a twist at the end.
Very cool. Where do you know where it's going to be released? In what formats? Is it theater? Is it streaming?
I
Are
don't
you
know yet.
stating anything yet? Or
I don't know yet. I mean, I'm hoping that if it's in the fall and we're all starting to go back, in movie theaters, if it's safe, that
right?
it could have a release in a theatrical release. I'm hoping.
I
We
hope
have
so
some
too.
pretty big distributors that are interested right now, and we've
It's
started
great.
the conversation. Yeah,
Cool.
we're
That's
going to be at
wonderful.
the London Independent Film Festival in a few weeks as well.
Mhm. Speaking of London and Europe, because you spent so much time there during your formative years, have you gone back to Europe? Have you spent time there since?
Oh, yes. I've gone back. Before the pandemic, I've taught in Paris one, two, three times at the three beautiful different theaters in Paris in French, because I speak French.
Of course.
And so I speak five languages, French being one of them. That was a milestone. I remember we stayed in this hotel. I can't remember the name of it, but it was overlooking a cemetery that had I think Victor Hugo is buried there. It was one of those very, very charming old French hotels. And I remember not being able to sleep, and it was very windy. And I had to wake up several times because the window, there was an old window, kept slamming and opening, and I couldn't sleep. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to teach tomorrow in French. This is such a milestone. And I had, three great experiences teaching in Paris. I taught in London at Errata a couple of years ago. Um,
Nice.
I've always traveled a lot. I've traveled all over the world, and with also this class called the Golden Box, which is a master class that I've
Mhm.
taught in places like South Africa, Johannesburg, Cape Town, which is so beautiful, Moscow, St. Petersburg,
Mhm.
and in Colombia. in Lima, Peru. I took the kids to Cusco and Machu Picchu, which was definitely on our bucket list.
Yeah.
I've traveled, everywhere, teaching in Guatemala, Panama. Um, I speak Spanish as well, so I teach in Spanish in those countries. I've always done a lot, and I've taken my kids to a lot of places. So now, as things open and there's light in the tunnel, and in a year from now, or I'll
Right.
be able to travel again and accept all the invitations that are waiting for me. One of them is really interesting. It's Thailand, which I've always wanted to go to Thailand. And so I worked on a movie there in December. I was in New York, but everything
Mhm.
is on Zoom, as we are. And so I worked in a movie in Thailand, which some very famous actors, and they were so talented. And they said, we want to open an acting school here, the Michelle Danner Acting School in Thailand. So I said, okay, let's do it. I'd love to go to
Yeah.
Thailand. Why not? So I
Uh,
love traveling. My kids love traveling. Um, and also everywhere I go, I look at places and think, oh, we could shoot this movie here. This is a great location. Everything becomes a location at the end of the day. Every wall, every tree becomes a location, every city.
Absolutely. Yeah, Thailand specifically, a lot of, again, going back to martial arts, that's another one of my domains, but a lot of martial arts films are done in Thailand. So there's a big industry there, and an acting school actually would be really good in Thailand because it'll help improve the quality. No offense to some of the films, but they could use additional focus on acting specifically. So yeah, that would be a good idea.
That was
Um,
great. There was a time difference, and I was in New York, and I had to wake up like at 5 o'clock in the morning. I said, "Oh God, why are you doing this? Don't you want to be sleeping at this hour?" And
yeah.
because I don't wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I wake up a little later. But then, I took my coffee and I sat in front of the computer. And we started to script analyze, and
Mhm.
the particular actor, the lead actor, I was working with, was so talented. He was so gifted, and I thought, yeah, that's why I do it.
Yeah. So you've mentioned three of the languages that you speak. What are the other two?
So I speak French, Spanish, Italian,
I
Portuguese,
figured Portuguese. Okay, got it.
yeah.
So in that line of languages, got it. Very nice.
Similar, but not too similar. My
No.
dad was a producer, so he produced Julio Iglesias a zillion years ago. I was a teenager in Rio de
Mhm.
Janeiro. And so I got a job, and they were paying me like really well. So I arrived at the airport, and of course I spoke Spanish. So I was like, I can speak Portuguese. What's the difference? I get there. Everybody's speaking so fast. I don't understand a thing. I had to pretend to be sick for 3 days and buried myself in the hotel room and watched televisions and listened to tapes and just trying to accustom myself with the sounds. And I emerged of that hotel room, at least being able to understand a little bit
Yeah,
more. And I didn't lose my job, which was good.
that's wonderful. Yeah, it is quite different. Pronunciation is very different. So yeah. Um, when you teach and when it comes to dialects and accents, I speak a few languages, only, and I know because I love doing accents. One accent swerves into another very quickly if you're not careful. With you being able to speak five languages, and I'm sure you have a lot more dialects, do you ever find that it's difficult to keep them separated?
Well, I have a little accent, and but I can do like a standard American if I apply myself to it. And usually, if I have to play I go and I see a dialect coach and I sit down and I study the sounds. If I'm
Yeah,
relaxed, like I'm talking to you now, I don't care what accent comes out. So I'm sure, yes, in fact, I've been told it could be a mishmash of European everything. You can't quite pinpoint what accent it is, but if I wanted to do like a real standard American or a New York accent or a Southern, I would know how to do that.
yeah, yeah. I think it's just being in that space and not going away from it.
And
My daughter caught
what languages do you speak?
Russian and in English, obviously.
Ah, that's great.
Yeah. And my daughter caught me a few months ago. I was doing an audition, and she helps me film, and she's my reader. And I was doing a Russian accent, and I love Scottish. Scottish is my favorite accent to do. And she stopped me. She stopped the tape, which I ask her never to do. I always say keep it rolling. Well, I'd rather I'll cut it later. And she said, Dad, listen to it because now your Russian is merging into Scottish.
Uh,
And she was right. And it's interesting because of the R's and because of some of the other things, it really kind of slides. So I found that ironic. That it's and Mike Myers is to blame because as soon as I heard him with his faux Scottish accent, I was hooked. That's it.
well, I only know two words in Russian, spasiba, and what is it, plejosta? And I'm forgetting
Uh,
that one.
yeah, spasiba is thank you, and pожалуйста is you're welcome. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
I
it
needed
works.
that. I traveled with a group, a Russian group, the ice skaters that won the Olympics.
Hmm.
They,
Which year?
oh God, what year was that? It was 90, 91. And they
Oh,
did a show called Bolshoi on Ice with
yeah.
all the gold medalists, the silver
Hmm.
medalists, the bronze medalists. And I can't remember the names of it. Igor was the choreographer. And I only remember that I had a hot affair with someone on the, um, and then the KGB was very worried that he was going to defect. So
Yeah.
it was a very dangerous tour. It became really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. At that time, especially, when things just started to break down, as you're mentioning the
Yeah.
timing. Okay, interesting. That's a separate show, or
That's
maybe,
a movie. That's
yeah.
a movie.
There you go. Why not do it? Or you've heard it here first, people. There's going to be a movie coming out on this topic. Perfect. As we wrap up, I wanted to ask you a few more questions of having done so much in all of these different areas of the industry. What drives you?
I don't know. I really don't know. There definitely something's driving me. I can tell you that. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm watching these documentaries the last few days, and so I'm quite nostalgic. I don't know if it's, there's a sense of, I don't know, just reminding me of my childhood, my parents. Life
Mhm.
goes too quickly. I wrote, the passage of time really affects me in a very emotional way, really provokes me. So maybe that's what drives me is that time goes so quickly, and I'm just trying to just grasp it. And, I just know that I did relate to the quote of Ingrid Bergman. She says, I need to act like I need to breathe. So I
Mhm.
need to be creative in that same way. I have to wake up in the morning and not let my creativity go to the side. And were days when you're dealing with the minutia of life and administrative stuff, that I don't let that, be the most important thing of
Yeah.
the day, that I always make sure that I am doing something creative because it's who I am.
Yes. Um, when I was talking to Michael Kostroff, I found myself saying the phrase that I later analyzed, and it's very true to who I am. And I told him that I find myself either being creative or destructive, and not destructive in the negative sense, but destructive as in the opposite of creative. So every day I have to do something that's creative, at least for a little bit. Otherwise, it just feels different, and it feels wrong, and it feels wasteful. So creativity is immensely important.
Well, on that, in a more like less abstract way, I had the pleasure of spending 6 hours talking with Gérard Depardieu. And before I met him, I used to tell my students that Gérard Depardieu always said that if he hadn't found acting, if he would have been destructive, literally, he would have been in jail.
Yeah,
Um, that acting, the art saved him. And so art does save people. It does save people. And then it's a beautiful art form. And I think right now, just the fact that theaters have been shut down, we need culture. We need
yeah,
it. And I don't, I mean, listen, of course, I love to go out with my friends and my kids and, enjoy meals and restaurants. But what I miss the most is live arts. What I miss the most is
mhm,
theater.
yeah.
So I'm hoping that, we're all going to come together and figure it out. So, that doesn't die because it can't.
It cannot. And the good news is, I have, as I'm sure you, not I'm sure I know, you have a lot of friends who are on Broadway, but some of my Broadway friends, their shows are starting to say that they're opening in December. So I'm really hopeful and optimistic that that is the case because we
Yeah.
definitely need it back.
We go to New York every December, and it was so odd that and we literally see a dozen shows. I take the
Mhm.
kids to see everything, and
Yeah,
this first was the first year where nothing. We didn't see anything. We
yeah,
saw the prom on Netflix, and that did something for us, but we didn't see anything else. So we're looking forward to this coming December where we'll be able to go see things. Yes.
yeah. Perfect. Well, it's such a pleasure having you on. Spasiba, merci beaucoup, and I really appreciate it. Best of luck with the runner and your other projects. When you're shooting the project about KGB, call me. Maybe I can be a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you
it's
so much.
it's my pleasure.
Bye.
And yeah, thanks for everybody for tuning in into another episode of Let's Dive In. We know you love it as much as we do, and that's why we keep doing it for you. Thank you.